Welcome back. So now we've tried to work with creating an observable. Now I want to show you an easier way to do this, and I want to show you another use case that we can use where I kind of want to test first if the object exists, and if it doesn't exist I want to be notified, and if it does exist I want to delete it. So I'm going to try and make some logic on my end instead on Firebase that kind of just validates that the object I'm trying to delete, or product in this case, exists before I delete it, right? So that's kind of the use case I want to fight for in this scenario right here. So let's just start out again with having a look at what we already created right here. I made an observable and I created it manually right here, but there's actually a way that's so much easier. So let's try and wrap this and change it so that instead of working with this manual function right here, we'll use what's called, I'll just return right here, and then we'll use what's called the from, which is actually an observable thing that you can get directly from the observable setup in RxJS. So I'll just say from, and all I have to do here is actually just put in the promise I want to convert from a promise into an observable. So with this one line right here and this from method, I can actually convert and do everything I just showed you down here. So that's actually how simple it is to convert a promise, which this is, into an observable, and I'm done, right? So it's very, very simple stuff. And if you want to know, it's actually from imported from the RxJS library, so it's just part of the library that creates the observables in the beginning. So that was a very fast way to kind of convert from a promise into an observable, right? So I end up with an observable of the type void again, and I'm happy. Everything still runs if I save this, and you can see that I can still delete items. Everything works as intended. Sweet. So let's try and jump back now, because what if I want to kind of do a validation before I delete it? The validation should pretty much just be, does the item even exist? Is it here? I don't want you to delete it. I want you to actually tell me it wasn't there, because maybe there was a reason that I wanted to delete it, and if it wasn't there, that's just weird. Why wasn't it there, right? So I have to try and set up some extra information to do that on the client side, because Firebase didn't take care of me out of the box. So I have to do it myself, right? So what I'll do is I'll try and combine two different observables right here, and we'll try and see if we can figure that out. So step one is I first want to kind of figure out if the product is already in the database, right? So I'll do this db dot, and then I'll try and say doc, just like we did before. I want to return a product, just like we did before. So nothing new here, right? And then I kind of want to explain where the product should be. It should be under the same path as we have right here. So nothing new there either. And instead of doing an actual, there we go. So instead of doing here a delete, I'll do a get. So here we do the get. Now the get request is actually an observable. So let's try and do this. So I can subscribe to it, but I can also pipe. We've already used pipe, so let's use that again. I will pipe my data, pretty much mean that I will use this data for something before I actually return it. In my case, what I want to do in the pipe is I want to use a function called Switchmap. Now the Switchmap function is pretty much a way for me to take one request, which is this request, execute it, do something with the data, and then return another request, which will be this request. Okay, so think of the Switchmap as a way for me to go from one internet request to another internet request, but only actually show response from one of them. So the first request sends the response into the second request, and that sends response back to this return type right here. That's the Switchmap. So let's try it out here. First of all, I know when I'm doing the Switchmap that the first response right here will probably be some kind of product document, right? It won't be a product because they're sending back more information than just a product. So it'll be some kind of product document I'll be getting back right here. Now I can use that product document for something. I could, for instance, use it to just say if the product document exists, or let's actually say if it doesn't exist, or let's just put an or in here, or the product document's data doesn't exist, that must be equal to the product not being there, right? So here I can then just throw an error. Throw error and just say document not found. Document not found. Or product, even better to be more specific. Product not found. And of course I need to make a new keyword because this is just an object, so there we go. So now I've pretty much set this up so that I'm making a validation in the map right here and saying if there's no product document, and it doesn't have a data, or it doesn't have data, it probably wasn't there. I didn't find the product that I looked for. And if that's the case, I would like to be notified that the thing you're trying to delete right now doesn't exist. I don't want just a everything went well notification back in the then method. I want to be notified it didn't exist. What you tried to delete doesn't exist. That's important information for me in my application. So it's just a choice I made. Now, if everything goes well and the document actually is there, I'll do an else statement right here. I'll say, if the document was actually found, what will I do? Well, then I kind of want to return this guy instead. And then I'm actually done. So there we go. So I'm pretty much saying, let me just try and run over the code again right here, because I know this is complex code and kind of hard to understand when you start out with promises and observables and especially Switchmap. But think of it this way. I want to try and execute this method right here to get some information about the product. So that's one request I'm sending. Now I could start using that data and working with that data somewhere in my component or somewhere else in my code. But instead I'm saying, no, I don't want to get the result back right here. I want to just take the result and pipe it, put it into another request if I need to. So I'm going to say, if there is actually a product there, then I want you to send another request and just kind of throw the other request away, right? I've used the data. I don't want to use the data for anything else. So just verify with the data and then send the real request, which is actually the delete request. Now when you're done with everything, just go and return the entire observable to me, the user of this, and I'm done. Okay? And I know this looks kind of scary the first time you see it, but it's actually a pretty fair way to do things if you don't have full responsibility of your backend like we don't right here. Then you can actually go in and manipulate the data on the Angular side using observables. Again, that's why I feel observables have so much power compared to promises. Of course, promises you can do the same thing, but it won't be as easy to manipulate as it is right here with the observables. Let's just add one more thing, because I also talked about the tap function, or I would like to talk about it, and tap function is pretty much just a way for me to kind of just look at the data without doing anything with it. So I'll just tap into the document right here just to show you what actually happens. And all I'll do is just put a debugger right here to just show you where we're at right now. Now again, the tap doesn't do anything. It's just a way for you to kind of tap into the data as it passes through the pipe. And this is actually a way for us to say, switching from one observable to the next observable and just returning the second observable here and throwing the first observable away. Okay? Sweet. Let's try and see what actually happens. Now I'll add the debugger here as well. Debugger. There we go. And then I will also add a debugger in the final line down here. There we go. Because then I can actually even go down here to this promise, and I can also kind of tap in here if I wanted to. But of course, when this is done, we're going to hit the breakpoint up here in either the subscribe or the error. So let's just place one in each area. Because I forgot to tell you, let's just do that actually, because I think I did this before the video started. So let's just quickly go and remove this. Look at this. Right now we have the next function up here, but I can actually, besides from the next, like I talked about in the last video, I can actually also add an error handling right here where I catch the error, and then I can actually do a Windows alert with that error. And that's kind of just what I did, window.alert, and then I kind of just popped up product not found or something like that. And I could also add the ID, of course, if I want to, like this, and then just do the same thing like we did up here. So kind of you have the same possibility, but this time it's for the error inside my system. So let's try and run this now and see what happens. I'll just add the debugger down here with the error as well so you guys can see it, and let's just try and jump into some code. Now first of all, let's actually delete and let things work as expected. Okay, so the first delete right here will work as expected, deleting P3. I'm getting in and I'm tapping into the system. So this tab, the first tab you see right here, is me just trying to check out, did I find a document? And notice I did find a document this time, because this guy exists in the database. Sweet! So I'll continue. I found the document, pretty much meaning I deleted the document. When the document is deleted, I get an event back saying, congratulations, you just deleted a document. So we are in the next statement, right? The next statement, or the then statement if it was a promise. And then we say, throw this alert to just explain to the user you just deleted the document. That seems to work. But before I actually did this, if you noticed, I checked if the document existed. Let's try and jump back to the code, and let's just, for the fun of it, go in and make some crazy ID right here just by adding some extra information here. This ID doesn't exist, so I should never get to the delete function down here. So let's just try and run our code once more and see what happens. Jumping back to the code, trying to delete P9. And we are going back to the tab just to see P9 doesn't exist, right? Because this time it doesn't exist. It's not there. This ID doesn't exist because I made a bogus ID, right? Let's try and continue and see what happens. That means that I hit the error instead. Product not found. So I just created a way, even though my server doesn't kind of validate for me if the product exists, I can now do it manually using observables that talk together with other observables inside a switch map. Okay, so that's the power of observables, and we could keep mapping this into some crazy statement if we wanted to, but now you've kind of seen the tab that can kind of just show you what's going on inside a pipe, and then we have the switch map which can take all the information from one observable and move it to a new observable and then destroy the first one, and then pass the information of the new observable onwards to the actual guy who wants to use the observable. So that's it for this lesson. The next lesson we'll try and actually play around with getting the actual product back after we've deleted it. That's it for this lesson. See you next time. Have fun.